Just in on court action in the Florida school shooting with Nikolas Cruz, the accused, set to be arraigned on murder charges this afternoon, exactly 1 month after the rampage on Valentine's Day that killed 17 people. Prosecutors say they will ask for the death penalty. Joining us now, Bob Bianchi, criminal defense attorney, former head county prosecutor and a trial attorney. Also with us, Jonna Spilbor, former prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney as well. Bob, I'm going to start with you on this because you are anti-death penalty, but you say that in this case, it's appropriate?
As a prosecutor, I've tried death penalty cases, so it does sound counterintuitive, I would say this. I didn't like the way the system was set up. I found it was disparate. But if there was ever a case for the death penalty when I was the head prosecutor, despite the fact that I'm against the death penalty, I would have filed charges in this case. They have everything you need. There's no question that he is the person who did it. There were innocent, vulnerable children, and that is an aggravating factor under the law. He did it with planning and foresight without any mental health defenses or any other kind of legal defenses that would apply. So even though I'm against it, as a boss, I have to follow the law, and I would file the death penalty in this case.
Jonna, his lawyers who are with the public defender's office in Broward County say, look, the guy is mentally unstable. You cannot execute him.
And I agree with that. So this is funny because I'm pro-death penalty, and this is one situation where despite the gruesomeness of this crime, like you would think, okay, anybody would want to see this guy fry, I think the prosecution is going to have a hard time because, number one, you have to make sure you have a unanimous jury that's going to sentence this guy to death, so it's not guaranteed, number one. And number two, the Supreme Court has long held that if you are intellectually disabled, it is cruel and unusual punishment to put you to death. So we don't know at the end of the day whether he's legally going to be able to be put to death.
What about the fact that the FBI and other agencies clearly screwed up in the months and years before this shooting? Does that in any way offer this kid any element of a defense?
They're going to try to use that as a defense, but what it says to me is that there's planning, preparation. This is not an isolated incident where the guy just went off. He has a violent history. He was dedicated to doing this, and as far as the mental health or intellectual incapacity arguments, he did this with planning, foresight. He executed it perfectly, and he ran from the scene, which shows consciousness of guilt. So while the FBI definitely didn't connect the dots, unfortunately, and I hate to come out on them, but we try to do intelligence policing where we share information from the federal, state, and local authorities to target a guy just like this. But it doesn't necessarily mean it would have prevented the attack, John.
All right, I want to turn to another case in Florida. Opening statements today in the trial of the widow of the Pulse nightclub gunman. Noor Salman is on trial, is about to go on trial. The prosecutors say that she knew what her husband was planning to do. I want to read a text from her to him on the night of the shooting. She wrote, "If your mom calls, say Nemo," that's a friend of his, "invited you out and Noor herself wants to stay home. She asked where you were. XOXO, love you." This is while he is either doing the rampage or on his way to the rampage. Jonna?
Yeah. XOXO, as you're about to annihilate dozens and dozens of people. This case is unusual in that normally prosecutors don't bring the spouse of somebody, a terrorist, to task. We didn't see it in Las Vegas when he had a significant other, that recent shooting. She's not being brought up on charges. One of the Boston bombers had a wife. She's not being brought up on charges. So this case is unusual in that sense, but I think it is a slam dunk. It's very easy to convict someone of obstruction of justice. She admitted to lying, and if she didn't know what was going on, I think that text is proof that obviously she did. They're not going to prosecute her for making him breakfast that morning. They're going to prosecute her for knowing and doing nothing.
And Bob, he took her to case out the club and said something like, what's it going to be like when these people are attacked?
Yeah, listen, as a prosecutor, I agree substantially with the analysis that John is making, but as a prosecutor, I have to look at where my weak points are and my vulnerability. We agree, obstruction of justice, she's done. She's going to be convicted. But on this material aiding and abetting charge, there are some facts that are just a little squirrely here, John, including that while the attack was occurring, he's texting her saying, "Are you seeing what's going on?" She's saying no. And he's like, "I love you, babe." And a lot of the indications that she went to places where he bought ammunition doesn't necessarily mean she knew what he was doing. Plus, cell phone records dispute that she was at those places.
If she knew and she goes to buy ammunition, those are the two dots that you need to connect.
If the prosecutors can do that, she's done.
The jury is seated. The trial is about to get underway. We will keep our viewers apprised as to what goes on in the case of Noor Salman. Bob Bianchi, Jonna Spilbor.
Good to see you.
Thanks, John.
Julie.